healthcare panel. My name is Maggie. I am a employer engagement intern here at the Career Center, and I'll be today's moderator. And we also have Myra, who is the marketing and employers engagement coordinator, who is working on back end for today's panel. So thank you so much again. And just a quick introduction, we host these industry insights series panels at the Career Center to focus on a lot of specific industries and invite working professionals in said industry to come share their professional journeys as well as any advice for the students. So for today, we have specifically on the healthcare industry sides, and we have 5 amazing panelists here working in different areas to come share their professional journey, how they got there, and any advice. And I hope that through this panel, our students are able to take away insights that can help with their individual career exploration. And yeah, so to begin, I'll have our panelists do their introductions, and we'll move into a formal Q&A session moderated by me. And then we'll open the floor up to students who have any questions for our panelists. And lastly, we'll wrap up with some closing remarks. So to start off, we'll go from the order starting left to right. So we're starting with Carolina. And for my panelists, please introduce yourself as well as share your background, your current role, as well as how your organization is involved in healthcare. So
Thank you, Maggie. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Carolina Amador. I work for Amgen, so that's how my company is, related to healthcare. We make medicines for people. In terms of my professional journey, I think it started, I started as a medicinal chemist intern in Roche in Switzerland. That was many, many years ago. And it was the first time that the pharmaceutical bug kind of, bit me. And I realized that I wanted to make medicines. And for that, I decided I needed a PhD because I didn't know how to make medicines. And so I came to USC to do my PhD in organic chemistry, which I graduated in December 10, 2018. It's a date you'll never forget after so many years of working in the lab. So during my PhD, though, I absolutely loved it. I learned a lot, but I decided I was actually better at doing the business of science rather than just the science itself. It was just kind of a natural calling that I saw. So I just kind of went with it, and I found my first job at Amgen in competitive intelligence, which pretty much just means you look at the external landscape, you look at the competitors, you see what other people are doing, and then you try to make sure your teams are creating an advantage and being better. And I did that for about 5 years. And then I decided to leave Amgen, and I went to another smaller company, also pharmaceutical, called BioMarin Pharmaceuticals, so up in the Bay Area. And I stayed there for only 2 years doing the same sort of competitive intelligence, but very focused on R&D, so research and development. I was not focused on any product markets, just really research and just really kind of supporting scientists. I loved it. And then I had the opportunity for this new job that I have now, which is, brought me back to Amgen here in Thousand Oaks, which was to be the chief of staff for the head of R&D at Amgen. This is a sort of opportunity that barely happens. So, I consider it very seriously. And I said yes, even though it is a wild job, I'll tell you that. But I'm learning a lot. I've been in this job for 5 months now. And yeah, every day is different. And yeah, I'm excited to talk to you more about it if you guys have any questions on it. Mag, did I miss anything?
no, that was perfect. Thank you so much, Carolina. As always, when I first started talking to you, I was always just fascinated because I'm a chemistry major, and it's just super cool hearing your side of being both in the research academia and then in the business side and integrating these two sides, which I feel like is really different, is always super cool to hear about. So thank you so much again. And now we're moving on to Linda.
Hi, everyone. Just making sure, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. And I apologize. I am a bit under the weather today, so I might be taking breaks to cough and all that. I'll spare you just going off camera when that needs. But I did my undergrad at USC, so I'm very happy to be back here doing this panel with you all. I wish we had something like this when I was an undergrad back then, but unfortunately we didn't. So it's awesome that we're doing industry highlights now. And so a little bit about me, I was pre-med at USC, started biochem, and then actually ended up doing a double in bio and health promotion. Actually, I guess it's considered two different program or degrees because it's two different schools under USC. I did Trojan Health Volunteers while I was there at USC. And I wanted to do pre-med until I came to a session like one of these back in the day, sponsored by a school called Cat Graduate Institute, asking, are you unsure what to do after undergrad? And that sounded like me because even though I had told myself and vowed to my late mom that I would be a doctor, I wasn't 100% certain. And so I attended this piano and learned about regulatory affairs and bioscience. And so I did a pre-med certificate there and also got regulatory experience. So that's how I ended up kind of here today. I do have I'll go into more of the details later on, but that's kind of my meandering into how I'm at regulatory affairs today. So I am with AbbVie doing global regulatory science, and like Carolina, it's a biopharm company. So we're really tasked, or our focus is really discovering and delivering medicine to patients. And so AbbVie has quite a few therapeutic areas, I think mainly immunology. So if you've heard of Humira, that's what AbbVie is known for. Nowadays, Rinvoq as well, and also with the acquisition of Allergan, Botox as well. But I'm primarily in the eye care space. And so I can talk a little bit more about global regulatory science, but then we're really tasked with making sure that products are safe and effective for patients. And there's other functions within AbbVie and other biopharma as well. They're also tasked with making sure they're accessible to patients as well. So that's just a little bit about me. I'm sure we'll hear more throughout the hour and a half.
Yeah, and thank you so much for sharing, Linda. Yeah, and I remember with our conversation, we talked about how the panel that you've been at for what to do after your major was super relatable to me as well. And I feel like this panel would really help. Seeing that all of you guys who here have been in a similar space, but we're able to get into all these super cool spaces and have these really cool experiences. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I apologize for your sickness again. I hope you feel better. Yeah, and now let's move on to Amanda.
Hi, everyone. I am Amanda Jensen. I started out with my bachelor's at UC San Diego. I was also pre-med until I got my first B my freshman year and realized that maybe med school wasn't going to be my path forward. And so then I sort of dabbled around trying to figure out where I wanted to go next. I held an internship at a small biotech company and realized that I actually liked doing science and I liked being at the bench. And that sort of led me into my PhD, which I had at USC. So I may have, some of the people on this panel, I may have actually been your TA because I'm old enough at this point. But so yeah, so I did that. And then sort of, a roundabout way, I found myself into diagnostics. So I work at Genentech, and the role that I currently hold is companion diagnostic strategy lead. So my role is to ensure that medications that we're generating in the oncology space that are targeted have the appropriate testing available to make sure we're finding the right patients. So I'm heavily involved in clinical trials. I'm heavily involved in regulatory affairs. And I'm also heavily involved in commercialization. So I sort of see a lot of different functions across the company. And I've been at a number of companies at this point, just sort of bouncing around between both the diagnostic side, so the people that are making the tests that you get when you go and get your blood drawn, to the pharma side. So I work both at Amgen and at Genentech now. So I've seen sort of, you know, both sides of the coin, big and small, across the different space. So that's me in a very quick nutshell. So nice to meet everyone.
Thank you so much, Amanda. Yeah, and I remember we have some conversation about the different experience working at big and small companies. So maybe if we do get there today in the panel, we'll love to hear more about just your experience and different takeaways. But yeah, thank you so much again. Moving on to Craig.
Great. Thanks, Maggie. Thanks for having me, by the way. So, my name is Craig, and I'm also a regulatory affairs professional as well, similar to Linda, but a little bit how I got here, since regulatory affairs is usually not a common path, at least for some people. You don't wish to grow up in this field. However, I started off as a transfer student at UC Irvine. I did my bachelor's in biological sciences, and while being a transfer student, I was there for 2 years. I chose biology since I was really interested in STEM. However, I didn't really know what I wanted to do at that time, whether it was the pre-med or the pre-pharmacy or any of those tracks. And I just decided to keep it general. I had the opportunity to do research in a neuroscience laboratory where we were testing the hypothesis regarding endocannabinoids being neuroprotective in several disease models, such as epileptic seizures, Alzheimer's disease, sort of those types of neurological, neuropsychiatric disorders. And yes, endocannabinoids, we were using cannabis sativa, at least for our research, actually. And getting that experience during that time, I mean, I was slightly interested in that research route. I mean, I was evaluating this type of research in mice and lab rats and all. However, it wasn't really for me at that time, at least maybe a year into my research. And talking to my PI while I was doing my research, he was actually a dual PharmD PhD from Italy. And, talking to him, I'm like, I don't know if this research is for me. I don't, me personally, I don't want to be a lab rat, at least. I mean, this was me being a bit ignorant of the PhD pathway, of course, because that's not always the case. But, I'd rather work in a more clinical type of setting. And he said, why not just try pharmacy school and kind of go from there, since that was my time as a senior in UCI. So, applied to pharmacy school and got in at USC. I did my PharmD and Master's in Regulatory Science. And coming into pharmacy school, I didn't have the traditional pharmacy experience, whether it's working at a typical like a CVS or a Walgreens, a chain pharmacy, or maybe even a hospital pharmacy as well too. However, going into it, I thought, let's just keep an open mind and see where I'll land in. And pharmaceutical industry wasn't really on my radar. However, once I got into USC and was exposed to many different areas where pharmacists can be involved, at least, came across, I don't want to spend too much time, at least, diving into details, but did a lot of internships and pharmacy rotations throughout my 4-year career, at least at USC, where had the opportunity of doing internships in more of the regulatory affairs, clinical development operations. Really, I would classify it as like the drug development sciences of bringing a drug to the market where it's being investigated in the clinic. So working at Amgen, at least in AbbVie in the oncology therapeutic space, Allergan, at least in medical aesthetics or Botox, for example. And, I also had the opportunity working at the Food and Drug Administration, at least more as a clinical pharmacologist, where really what those professionals do are they're really trying to evaluate the ideal dose that you would give a drug to patients, for example. And, being in regulatory affairs right now, we work with health authorities such as the Food and Drug Administration and other global health authorities too. And really, in a nutshell, what regulatory affairs is we want to bring medicines to patients at least. However, there are certain rules and regulations specific to countries and regions that we must abide by in order to conduct clinical trials or sell innovative medicines to patients, for example. So during my time in pharmacy school, I got all that experience. And after pharmacy school, that would be 2020. Now here at Gilead for almost 5 years, where if you know of Gilead, you would probably know of the HIV therapeutic area where you probably see commercials for Biktarvy and Descovy and maybe some of these other antiretrovirals, really for the treatment and or prevention of HIV. And pretty much been here for 5 years at least, and that's kind of in a nutshell where I am today. So yeah, if you have any questions, throughout this panel for the next maybe a little bit over an hour, feel free to let me know. So I think that covers it, Maggie. How was that?
Yeah, that was amazing. Thank you so much for going into all these details again. I know for me, at least, when I first heard of regulatory affairs, it is, as you said, something that I think students don't think about as a pathway, but it's so crucial to especially the clinical and pharmaceutical space. And I also really love hearing your experience working in the FDA, and when we talk about how that really helps with you now in the industry regulatory perspective, working with them so closely on all these commercializations. So that's super cool, and hopefully we can get into more details about that. But thank you again. And lastly, we have Olga.
Um, oh, sorry, it's the first time I see my slides. Thanks for not putting my graduation year. So my PhD is from 1998. I fear there might be people whose mom was my student when I was a TA. I hope not, but entirely possible. So it was 1992 through 1998 was my PhD program. And it was a very exciting time to be a grad student. You're doing your own research, you're going to scientific conferences, present your research, everyone listens to you, really exciting. But, oh,
Oh,
are we a little
apologies for
behind on
that.
time?
No,
I'll try to go fast.
sorry. No, don't worry. I think
Anyway,
I missed
but
like
it all came to crashing in, right? They give you a diploma and you're locked out of the lab. So I tried to kind of pursue a scientific career thinking this is something I want to do as a profession. But when I was a postdoc, I realized that being a grad student, it's more like a kid playing around in your parents' house. You have all these resources and you think it will go on forever. But when you're on your own, it's very different. And I saw professors, kind of people who are ahead of me on the career path, not doing much lab work, but sitting and reading papers and drafting grant applications and working with grad students who are not really as nice as you think they would be when you're a grad student. So that picture somehow did not satisfy me very much. And then looking around, and who said that? Amanda, or maybe Linda. There were no career panels like that when I was a grad student. And there wasn't much of internet either. So it was just the word of mouth. Oh, I heard somebody doing that and she's happy, and I heard somebody else doing this and he's happy. That's how people decide on their career paths, more or less. So I heard of some people older than me who were in patent law programs, and I thought I'll try that. So unfortunately, to be a patent attorney, you have to go to law school. There's no escape. So when I was a postdoc at USC for my second postdoc, I made a deal with my boss and I could go to law school at night. And it was a part of the molecular biology department, but Irani building didn't even exist then. And so it was the old cheese grater white building, Stauffer Hall, not the Stauffer, the other was Seaver Hall of Science. No, I forgot what it's called. It's the white building next to the Mudd Hall of Philosophy. That's where molecular biology was. And this one lab where I worked was at the School of Dentistry on the top floor. So I could literally see Loyola Law School from the top window. And night school is really no fun. It's at 5:30 p.m. when everyone hangs their lab coat and goes home. You go to school, and 6 to 10, you're in school. But it's a little less intense than day school because it's spread over 4 years instead of 3. And anyway, it went by fast, and I became an attorney. And like Craig said, it's not the profession that people think about much, patent attorney. There's so many lawyer shows, never ever was there or will there be a patent attorney in one of those, right? But nevertheless, there's a lot of us. It's sort of a niche profession. Our career paths are more or less the same. You have a PhD in some hard science, and you have a law degree, and you work on protecting companies' intellectual property. You can be a patent attorney without having an advanced hard science degree, but you might end up just doing patent litigation, where it's more traditional lawyer thing. You're writing things, you're showing up in court, you're arguing, while a better patent attorney life is when you work in-house. You actually work with scientists, identifying new things, thinking of how to file a patent application, looking at other people's IP, thinking of whether that's a threat to your business. You have to start at a law firm. It's very, very unusual for a patent attorney to be hired straight out of law school and go in-house, because patent attorneys in particular are very expensive. There's typically one of you, not like a group. So you have to learn somewhere else. You cannot learn on the job working in-house. I started at a small law firm in Beverly Hills. Sounds really glamorous, but it's like Beverly Hills adjacent. Then this Roche job opened up. Roche is a giant company, and many people here are Roche alumni or current employees. And Craig, your CEO, is a Roche alumnus. In fact, he was our CEO of Roche Diagnostics in Pleasanton, Dan O'Day, when I worked there. Anyway, Roche alumni are all over the place. So I worked at one of the diagnostic locations here in the Bay Area in Pleasanton. This was their PCR business, back when PCR patents were still alive. And in fact, my PhD boss at USC, Norm Arnheim, was one of the inventors of PCR. He was not on the first, but on the second PCR patent. The first one was just caramels. Anyway, it's a great business, right? A lot of diagnostic tests include PCR. People don't think of it as there was a world without PCR. Yes, there was. And then PCR appeared. That was a very valuable IP. But like any IP, it expired. Sorry. Anyway, I worked at a Roche giant company for quite some time. And then working at a small company is a lot more interesting. So during COVID, when there was so much money in biotech, there was the great resignation. People were leaving for more exciting positions. I got a position at Caribou Biosciences. If you know about CRISPR, that was kind of the next exciting technology. It's one of the Jennifer Doudna's companies, and they tried to be a technology company, just improve CRISPR technology, but then they decide to go into cell therapy, use CRISPR to engineer cells to fight different diseases. For non-science majors, it's like if you start with a small molecule as your drug, a small molecule fixes something wrong in your body, then the next step would be an antibody, which is a very complex, very large molecule that's very, very specific for this just one protein in your body. So the next step is cell therapy. You think antibody was big. Now it's a whole cell engineered to go and find some problem in your body and fix it. So that's what cell therapy is. And that's what Caribou started doing. They became a cell therapy company, and they had a couple candidates. So I worked there for a while, but as you know, the biotech boom with all the money in 2020 eventually ran out. So Caribou became so poor that they really are curtailed R&D. A lot of scientists were let go, and all the focus now is on the 2 clinical candidates and the clinical trials, which take a very, very long time, because the follow-up for each patient is 6 to 12 months. And there's a double-digit number of patients, maybe 12, maybe 15, and they're very hard to find. So it's going to take a very long time for those clinical trials to run out. And I wanted to look for something that's more active and just plain R&D. And Allogene, where I work now, is another cell therapy company, very similar technology. I was thinking, oh, my next job will be something completely different, something very exciting like microbiome or whatever. But then I got this phone call, and here I am doing pretty much the same thing. I guess we will be talking about what our day is like and whatnot. But being an in-house attorney, there's only one of me here. There's other attorneys, but in intellectual property, it's just me. And I talk to scientists all day long, then I read papers, then I write patent applications, then I talk science with patent examiners when they ask for an explanation or how your invention is different from some other stuff that they read about. So that's what I do all day. And I think it turned out good. one anecdote again about how people selected careers in my day. One of my professors that I TA'd for Biochemistry 210 was this guy, Arnold Dunn. And I asked him, "Oh, Dr. Dunn, what should I do? My PhD is ending soon. Should I go to business school?" He says, "Nah, go to law school." So fast forward, I'm a postdoc at USC. I see a flyer for Dr. Dunn's retirement party. So I show up. "Oh, what's new with you? Dr. Dunn, I'm almost done with law school." "Why the hell did you go to law school?" Well, right. It was very difficult in those days to lay out a career path for oneself, but I think mine turned out pretty good. Yeah, that's
Thank you
that.
so much.
I
Thank
go
you
on
so
mute.
much. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Olga. Yeah, I know I've always been fascinated by how you were able to balance getting a JD as well as a PhD at the same time. So crazy again, just thinking about that. Thank you so much for sharing all your experience. Yeah, and I'm super glad that we're able to do these sort of panels now where students can learn from professionals like you all. And I'm sad that it wasn't a resource in the past, but we're glad that we can start providing this now. So yeah, now we're moving on to our moderated Q&As. And I do apologize. I feel like this first question, I didn't realize that it was kind of a redundant question. I feel like our panelists went through pretty much in detail a lot about their professional journey. So in case there is anything you guys would like to highlight specifically from your professional journeys, but if not, we can skip this question. Is there anything we would on our minds that we would really like to talk about? All right, then I think we can start with the next question. So, just like what our panelists have shared, I believe everyone has sort of more a traditional STEM background with their undergraduate studies, with doing research and all that. But I think all of our panelists diverge into really different fields such as strategy, regulatory, business, as well as patent and law side. So I really love to learn more about how you identified your fit in the industry and what advice do you have for students who are still exploring and trying to figure out where they belong in healthcare. And we can start with Carolina, maybe in the same order as the introduction.
Sure, happy to. So in my case, because I did a transition, right? I transitioned out of the bench. I got the job because I was just networking. So does anyone know Biotech Connection LA? I'm sure the students know. Put some thumbs up if you guys have heard about this nonprofit in LA. But it's a nonprofit that helps connect students with the industry, so academia and industry. And so I've joined the organization when I was a PhD student. At some point, I ran the organization as president, and now I sit on the board to advise the current students. It's a fully student-led organization. And so I just got to meet a lot of people. I got to network a lot, and I got to learn and meet all these people that have jobs that I've never even heard about, right? And so that's kind of how I understood that having a PhD does not mean you need to work in the lab. And that was kind of, I think nowadays there is a lot more information about it. But 10 years ago, there wasn't that much information. So this call of alternative careers, right? When you have a PhD and leave the lab, it turns out they are not that alternative. They're actually, pretty common. So I got to learn about it by just talking to people, by doing, going to these events and just asking questions. Now, I think, and I advise you to do the same because those types of organizations are exactly meant for that. And I'll put the name in the chat. Now, how do you fit, right? Like I feel this belonging within the industry. I'm trying to find where I belong within the pharmaceutical industry. And I think that's okay. We don't need to have all the answers about our career. Careers and people evolve. And with all honesty, at the rate that the AI is changing businesses, my future career might not even exist right now. So I think it is okay to kind of, go with the flow. But my mantra has always been to follow good leaders, right? You can be a big companies, or you can be a smaller companies, but if you have a great manager, if you have great leaders and mentors within that company, I feel that's a good pathway to follow, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, and thank you for sharing the resource. I feel like that'll be such a great resource for our students to look into. And I know that I don't have any just nearly as extended industry experience or working experience as you, but as a student, I also feel there's this pressure to find your belonging to fit in, but I feel like we're always having changing of interest. So knowing that you also have this experience is really affirming. And yeah, we can move on to Linda.
Sure. I am really happy at the panel now because I feel like I'm hearing so many more similarities than differences. Like, I think when I was pre-med, I thought everything was so prescriptive. There's only one path. You're going to do med school, you're going to be a doctor, or you're going to get your PharmD and become a pharmacist. But what I'm hearing is that we're all really meandering. We started at one place, potentially, like you said, like a science degree, and are in so many different realms and where we diverged. And so, I think kind of just piggybacking on the first question too. So I think, I'm still finding my fit, but I am very happy where I am today. And I think that's also thanks to what I value. And so, like I mentioned, I wanted to be a doctor at first, and that was because of the patient care aspect. And I felt like because I'm working at a pharmaceutical company and I'm working in regulatory affairs, we get a lot of exposure and a voice into what goes into the patient care. And so I think my job currently addresses that. Another part is science. And so although we're not the clinical scientists or non-clinical scientists, we do have to have a general understanding of sciences as well to understand like clinical study designs, the results of animal studies, et cetera. I have an MSPH in health policy, and regulatory affairs is kind of similar to policy in the stance where you do need to have some understanding of policies, regulations, and some background into how that is into the healthcare system. And finally, problem solving. Every day I get to think about how to problem solve, whereas it's answering the question of how do we get this product to market or how do we keep this license on the market. There's a lot of problem solving. So a lot of things I find satisfying in my career right now is really the culmination of what I enjoy in all my previous experiences. So I think to your point, Maggie, and to a lot of panelists as well, really my advice is don't pressure yourself to have it figured out now. I know it sounds kind of silly because when I was 20 or 21, I was like, oh my goodness, like I'm almost graduating, USC is expensive, like what am I going to do for the rest of my life? And I felt like I had to do one thing and that's it, and figure that out, or stick to that for the rest of my life. But I found that it's really not an aha moment. I really landed my opportunities by accident and just saying yes to everything that I was curious about and thought might be a good fit for me. And healthcare is such a big field that you might land where you didn't expect. I think Olga was saying earlier, like we didn't really know what career opportunities there were at that time. And so you just knew kind of medicine, you knew law. But then partially, I guess, thanks to COVID, we know public health more as well now. And so by just saying yes to things that interest your mind, you might end up where you didn't know existed. The other, I guess, piece of advice is or also to consider or allow your personal challenges to also guide where you are in life. And so you can maybe plan your career as much as you want, but then there's also going to be personal obstacles or just different things that happen in life that might shift the way you your direction, and that's okay. I think I quickly shared that I had vowed to my late mom that I was going to be a doctor because that's all I knew, and to take care of patients so that she wouldn't have to suffer the same fate. She actually passed away from a rare disease, and so I landed my first job due to an MD MPH who had a regulatory consulting company who was doing rare diseases, and I felt like the stars aligned. I'm like, this person is pre-med, he focuses on rare diseases, I can make an impact. And so I said yes to that opportunity. That took me from sunny Southern California to the East Coast in Washington, D.C. And I spent nearly a decade there. But that also made me realize I wasn't really interested in medicine as I thought I would be. And so I went ahead and talked to him more about public health because he also has an MPH degree. And so I thought to myself, well, let's just apply to med school and public health schools at the same time, which I don't recommend because that's also a lot of time and money as well. If you can try to avoid that as much as possible. But thanks to those interviews and those application cycles, I found out my calling was more in public health than in medicine. And so even in medical interviews, they said, I don't think your heart is here in medical schools. Your heart is more in public health. And so by working regulatory, I figured health policy was kind of the direction I was going. So went to Hopkins, which is nearby DC, got my MSc in health policy there, did some regulatory consulting, rigor consulting as well, worked at some smaller pharmaceutical companies, and then at some point ended up at the FDA. I did a fellowship for 2 years there, and I was actually the first fellow in the Division of Risk Management. So doing, working on medicines that really have a REMS, or risk evaluation mitigation strategy, so affecting a very small population of drugs again. So kind of back to where I first started, where it's a small population that's affected by these drugs. And so I found that it was, I felt like I found my fit there. Until they told me you need a doctorate to stay at FDA. And so even though I had thought about the DRPH, I wasn't 100% until they told me that. And so I enrolled into, or applied to the DRPH program at Hopkins, and today I'm still trying to finish the program. So that's, it's just a side note that you can be successful without a doctorate as well. And then I think being invited to the panel today is a testament to that. So thank you, Maggie. And sorry, going back to that. And so after FDA, I had worked at FDA for a couple of years. It was COVID, and my dad was alone and actually in ill health. And so I decided I had to go back to the West Coast to be with him. And so I opened up my LinkedIn, say I'm looking for new opportunities, and that's how AbbVie found me. And I wouldn't have been at AbbVie otherwise. So thanks for letting me be here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Linda. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, and I feel like you gave so much nugget of advice just throughout your career journey, and I really like I think the idea of just being open to all these different experience, and yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and I think we are kind of running a little bit short on time, so if the panelists wouldn't mind kind of synthesizing maybe their ideas, that will be amazing. But if not, we'll still play it by ear. And yeah, can we move on to Amanda?
I talk quickly too, so that may or may not be a benefit to anyone. But one thing I just wanted to say, I echo everything that everybody else has said, but especially for this group, if you're trying to figure out what am I supposed to do next, what am I going to do after I graduate, there's a lot of tools out there directed at PhDs and trying to help them find, what comes next outside of academia, because the academia world is just so cutthroat, and so, it's hard to get into a lot of times. People will do postdocs for a long time and never get a professorship. So there's a lot of tools out there for PhDs, just from an educational point of view, just letting you know what there is. I could sit here for 20 minutes and just tell you titles with no explanation of the different types of things that you can do in industry that you would have never even heard of. There's quality, there's a medical science liaison, there's sales, and depending on what your personality is and the things that you are really great at, one of these roles could really speak to you. So there's a lot more out there than you necessarily realize. You can also like just go through LinkedIn and go through the job postings and see like, what the heck is this? What are these different roles? At your very early stages, when you're first starting to apply, for better or for worse, you actually can apply to a lot of things. There's a lot of at those entry level roles, you probably qualify for a significant amount. The caveat there is that so does everybody else. So they're going to be really competitive. You're going to have to apply a lot, but you're not really pigeonholed into anything. There's a lot of different opportunities there. Also, when you're starting out early in your career, there's a lot of understanding of flexibility. There might be rotation programs at different pharma companies where you go through 4 different roles within a year, and so you get to kind of experience the different spaces. So just to say that you don't have to like set your sights on something like, this is what I'm going to do next. For me, when I started in industry, I was doing a postdoc. Another postdoc was there, and she brought her baby into the lab because the daycare was closed, but she still had experiments to run. I was like, you know what? This is not the life for me. I am not the type of person that is going to bring their baby into the lab. So that's when I knew academia wasn't really my space. But I did have babies. I had 2 kids at home. I had a husband. I was deeply rooted in Los Angeles. So I stuck a pin in my house on Google Maps, and I searched for pharma within a reasonable driving, radius from where I live in the Valley, and said, what do we have? And so that's where I started applying to jobs just to see what I could get. And I found one. It was 10 minutes from my house at a small diagnostic company. And that was, back in 2017. So I've been in diagnostics ever since. I'm a director now. Again, like I said, heavily involved in clinical trials and regulatory affairs. So, you never really know where you're going to end up, but just being open and flexible and seeing what there is really useful.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Amanda. Yeah, I really love the story of how you just dropped kind of a pin onto your map to find all of the companies. So thank you for sharing that. Now can we move on to Craig, please?
Yeah, sure. I'll be really quick since I know we're going short on time, and there's been a lot of great advice shared by the other panelists, so we're running out of suggestions, I guess. But I guess one thing to highlight that might be similar to what other people, but like, trying to find out what is your ideal role. And, some people might not really know like what is the biopharmaceutical industry or like some of the roles. I mean, we meant hearing things thrown out like medical science liaison, regulatory affairs, IP patent law, like there's just all these various terms everywhere. So information is at your fingertips, so you can do the research as much as you can. However, you can only do so much, of course. So, maybe what I challenge is that what would be your ideal role if you were to create a role today, like if you were in that healthcare industry. And what I mean by that is, do you like writing? Do you like working in diverse teams? Like, do you like interfacing with patients, for example, or do you like working like in a more like business, like suited environment, for example? So trying to figure out like maybe some of the pros and cons or like what you would want to do on a day-to-day basis, that might help shape what you would want to do in let's say in the healthcare industry or really any industry at all. It can be related to topic area. Do you like to be more close to the science? Do you prefer more of like a marketing role where it's kind of more sales or commercial, for example? So there's a lot of different ways to fit in the pharmaceutical industry, and there's a lot of different roles. However, it is challenging when you're hearing about this for the first time and it's just kind of thrown at you. I mean, for me myself, just real quickly, I mean, being in pharmacy school, like really try to put yourself out there. Since my experience in pharmacy school, I mean, it is very clinically focused. I have worked in several faculties, at least in pharmacy, where I've worked in a literal jail pharmacy before. I have worked in the frozen tundra of Anchorage, Alaska, servicing the veteran population, for example. But I've also tried to get experience in the biopharmaceutical industry, what I think was kind of mentioned on my slide regarding to all these various companies. So, try to put yourself out there. If you're able to get secure roles, that's fantastic. If you're not, still try to put yourself out there, whether it's networking or even just try to do the research yourself and really think about, what would you want to do on a day-to-day basis. So I think that's all I have since I know we want to be a little quick on this.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, and I've always been fascinated by your experience working with jailmates, and that's super interesting. I feel like is a super interesting experience to add to everything you have. And yeah, lastly, we have Olga. Would you like to share some on this topic?
I think it's Carolina. Or is it me? Okay, me it is. Well, a lot of good things have been said, but well, one thing I wanted to say, and I don't think it has been said, look at your personality. Now there are all these personality tests, and I guess the most basic distinction is, are you extroverted or are you introverted? I didn't know anything about it, but I worked in patent law for a long time, and this is the most stark example of this when we had one of those consultants come and evaluate us, and there were 19 lawyers and all of Roche Diagnostics. We had essentially identical personalities. We were all very introverted, like on the outer um, uh, um, out there on the scale of introversion, and that's what apparently our job requires. So if you think you're extroverted, maybe patent law is not for you. And USC has this resource. It's like an alumni network. So students can write to you. There's some kind of a database, and then they can write to you and ask you questions. So if you're thinking of a career and maybe someone in that network is doing that, just ask them, what's your day like? What is the thing that you're doing most, and what is the thing you most like? What is the thing that you most dislike? Because not to be a whiner or anything, but it's difficult to sustain a job where a lot of the time you're doing things you really don't want to do, right? Every job involves something that you don't like to do, like checking invoices, that the invoices sent to your company are correct. Nobody likes doing that, but it's on it. For me, it's a very, very small amount of time. Most of the time, I'm doing things that I do like. So if you find out that during the day, most of the things that have to be done, you don't like doing, no matter the topic, maybe it's very exciting or patient care or whatnot. If if your day doesn't look good to you, do not do that job because you will not last long. This said, it's good to take chances because big companies, and Roche included, have a lot of opportunities for people to move within the company. So if you landed a job and you don't really like it, but Joe across the hall is doing something you really, really like doing, then you go to HR and you say, how can I get the job that Joe has? Not to displace Joe necessarily, but to develop your skills into a completely different direction. And those things are very much available. I don't know, Amanda, if you ever ran into Ria in companion diagnostics at Roche. Yeah, that person, not here, she started as a scientist. And then she became interested in patent law. Then she worked in the patent department. Then that got boring. She got trained in regulatory and she worked in regulatory. Then that got boring. She went to work in companion diagnostics. So in a big company, it's not the end. If you got a job as this and that at a big company, you can get a completely different job. Just look around and see what it is that you like to do.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you so much for sharing that, Olga. All right. I know since we're running a bit short on time, I apologize. I feel like our panelists had just so much great details to share that unfortunately we can't encapsulate all of them today. But maybe for the next two questions I have, maybe we can have just a couple of panelists if they really feel like they resonate with the topic to jump in, and maybe we can do like a little rotation style. But for this one, um, what is your favorite project or experience that you were able to be involved in? And if applicable, how is that shaping your career today? And if there is any panelists who feel really strongly about this topic, would you like to share?
I can go. I have one from when I very first started out with the company that I used the pin to find. One of the things that they wanted to do was they wanted to file the device with FDA. They wanted to get an FDA approval. And so we didn't have a regulatory affairs. We had me, and I was tasked to figure it out. And I did. And I sat there and I used Google and I watched webinars and I essentially taught myself regulatory affairs. And what was funny about that is that when I then applied to Amgen for a regulatory affairs role, they're asking me like, what's your background? How did you learn this? What did you do? And I was like, Google. I used Google that, and was very transparent about it. And what was funny was they're like, oh yeah, we use Google too. So it was such a great thing that like, everyone is human. And it was just really, it was a fun experience to, try and learn something that I knew nothing about and have it be, I was on the right track. I got pretty darn close to where everybody else was. So that was really great. It's, stuck with me throughout this whole thing. Is like, if you just look it up and try and figure it out, it may actually have a more of an impact than you realize.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. That's super experiences. Yeah, and I feel like sometimes we don't realize just all the resources we have. Yeah. Is there any other panelists who would like to speak on this question? If not, we can go to the next one, which is the last question I have prepared, which is if you could go back and give your younger professional self one advice before you start in this field, what would it be? And feel free to jump in if you.
I'd love to answer this one. I think this is such a great question because we just take some time to reflect. And I think to me is that you should trust your instincts, even if you cannot rationalize them. If it feels wrong, it's probably because it is, even if you quite cannot like tell the reason. And you can use that for like several things, it can be an interview, right? Where you're talking to the hiring manager and you just feel something is off. Probably it is off and you shouldn't take the job. Maybe it is, I don't know, like maybe it is someone telling you that you should do X and you're like, but I really feel Y is my strength, So listen to yourself, because that kind of advice comes in so many ways, and that kind of like gut feeling. And sometimes we try to come up with pros and cons and lists of why you feel that way, and you really don't have to rationalize it. So that's my advice to myself.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. That's such a great advice. I feel like all of us have instances where we have that instinct that just tells us there's a way to go, and I feel like trusting that more be great. Yeah, any other panelists who would like to speak on this question?
Maybe I
Yes.
can add something. Job search can be very brutal, but it's never personal. It is, of course, very frustrating when you spend time interviewing. That's if you get an interview, and then in the end they don't pick you. There's always a reason. And one should never regret not getting a position because somebody determined that they would not work well with you. And you should consider yourself lucky that you're not stuck working with a person who doesn't like working with you. And there's always many, many, many applicants. Everybody's using AI or whatever they're using to apply for positions. A typical position receives dozens, if not hundreds, of resumes. It's very hard to stand out, but eventually something will turn up. It always does. It may take some time. And when I was looking for my first law job, I was working at Cantor's Bakery on Fairfax. And sometimes just, gosh, why am I doing this? This is terrible. I have 2 doctoral degrees. But eventually something turned up, and it always does. So be patient in your job search. Don't expect too much because something will be found.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I know probably a lot of students right now are in the period of searching for internships, and I know that's always a frustrating experience. So thank you for sharing that. Any other panelists who would like to jump in on this question?
Yeah, sure. I could say something. Keep an open dialogue with people. And this isn't just goes for like networking or anything like that, but even whether it's related to like mentors or you can be like with your friends who all have a similar interest, but really cultivate your relationships because we're all kind of in the same boat here. I mean, even in this Zoom room, we're all really interested in tangentially related things, whether it's like research and development or bringing new innovative therapies to patients or any of that nature. So, I mean, really keep an open dialogue, at least develop your relationships. It can be with mentors, at least latch onto something and really pick their brain, honestly. Because I mean, when I started out in pharmacy school, I kind of just went in blind and just tried to do everything myself. You can do it that way, but I mean, I think it really helps at least to have that connection with people who have similar interests.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Oh, Amanda.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I have one other thing that I wanted to add.
Yes.
Reaching out to people for informational interviews, purely informational interviews, is fantastic. People love to talk about themselves. They will happily tell you how great they are and everything they do. But we're all sitting here on a panel doing it again. So, people will love to talk to you about it. That said, do not go into an informational interview hoping that you're now going to make a connection and they're going to submit a resume for you. We can feel it when you're doing that, when you're just there because you want to have that person do something for you on the end. With that same thread, you can reach out to people on LinkedIn, you can ask for informational interviews and, try to get connections that way. But if you cold call someone and say, hey, we went to the same school together, can you please submit this resume for me? I get those all the time. Sometimes I might help depending on how nice the email is, but for the most part, I probably won't. So, it's really uncomfortable, but actually building a network and reaching out to people and trying to learn more about them. And then if something works out, they'll let you know. It's kind of like an interview on our side too, right? If we're talking with someone like, oh, you are good, like you're asking all the right questions. Like if I have a role come up, I'll reach out to you. But it's not always going to work out that way. But yeah, asking for information on reviews is great, but don't I guess I was like, don't overstay your welcome and trying to get more out of it.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Actually, I always brag to people about my job of how I feel like I could just do informational interviews with like the excuse of inviting you guys to a panel, but just being able to talk to you guys and learn about all your experience has been amazing. Oh, over to you.
Well, if you're introverted, like I would rather go to the dentist and see if any teeth need pulling than do an informational interview. So for me, attending those events, there's so many of them in Los Angeles. And if you want to stay in LA area, which I highly recommend because I'm not there anymore and I miss it. Just going to it's easier to approach somebody when the person is already standing and talking to a bunch of students. It's easier to join that crowd and start talking than one-on-one approaching somebody and asking them to talk to you. To me, that would be very difficult.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I totally relate as an introvert. I feel like it's always a struggle of starting that conversation. So yeah, utilize resources. And for students here, feel free to utilize resources at the Career Center. We're always open for you guys. And yeah, Linda, is there anything you would like to share? I know our panelists all kind of have their
Yeah, thanks. I'm an introvert too, so I'm used to just kind of to talk first. But I think my piece of advice is really just to tie in and culminate everything that's already been shared today. And that's really just to not be so hard on yourself if things don't go the way you planned. I think you're all here today because you're very high achievers looking for a career in healthcare. I think all of us have picked a route that's kind of different from what we thought we might be. And so don't treat I guess, don't see those as failures, see those as little victories into doing something that you actually are trying to end up one day. And so every experience is an opportunity to really find yourself and figure out exactly what you want to do. And so they're all little stepping stones. They're not failures.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I feel like that is definitely something our students really need to hear, especially during this time. Yeah, and thank you so much again for answering all my questions. That is all I have prepared on my end. And now I do want to open the floor to any student questions. And although priority would be given to people who have their hand raised, feel free to drop your questions in the chat as well if you don't feel comfortable using more mic, and I can read it out to our panelists. Maybe to jumpstart the conversation, for me, I think panelists here had mentioned a lot of just continuously learning and growing and also getting knowledge in all these different fields. I know like Amanda mentioned, she had to pick up regulatory affairs on Google, which are still fascinating. For our panelists, how do you continue your learning and growing in your role today? And is there any specific habits, resources that you find especially valuable and would like to share?
I'm happy to share. I learn with, I think, maybe three things I will highlight. One, I ask questions. You know, I have a new job, right? 5 months. I'm still using the new card, and I'll use it for as long as I can. So I just ask a lot of questions. I don't know what I don't know, so I ask questions, and people usually are very, you know, open and receptive to answering. The second one is curiosity, right? I feel curiosity really makes us go further. You know, the students are here, they want to listen to whatever, you know, the panelists have to bring. That means they're curious about our careers. And I think that's exactly what you should be doing, just be curious. And then, you know, in terms of resources and tools, you know, Amanda used Google, and now everyone uses AI. Everyone uses ChatGPT for everything. So that's a number one tool that, you know, it's just in our back pocket.
Thank you for sharing. Oh, I know some student questions are coming in, but I know that I think Olga and Craig might have something they want to share on my question. If you guys still want to jump in, feel free.
Well, I'm a patent attorney. I always deal with new stuff. Old stuff is no interest to me. But there are all these news resources. Some of them are free. Some of them require a subscription, but still free. A lot of them may have some student rate if you want to subscribe. I really like Endpoint News. That's more medical. And then Genome Web. That's more scientific. Just check if there's any news that interests you. Maybe a new company is starting up and they're hiring, or somebody wrote an interesting article, and you can always contact them and say, "Oh, your article was wonderful." Well, it'll be music to their ears, and they will be in your network. So that's what I would recommend: Genome Web and Endpoint News.
Thank you so much. I'll type them in the chat as we speak. Craig, do you have anything you would like to share?
I think we can go ahead to the next question. So that's okay. Thank you.
Yeah, sounds good, of course. Okay, I know Juan has his hand up, so would you like?
Sure, thank you. And thanks to the panel. And I recognize we're very lucky to even have this conversation. Because when you were in our shoes, it sounded like really difficult. So thanks for asking and answering all these questions. I have a question mainly for Olga Zimmerman and Carolina. It's about small biotechs. So like we all hear about all these small biotechs and how interesting it's in it and how many hats you have to wear. Where do you find like how to apply there? How do you know about these companies? How do you come across them? How do you get your foot in the door?
Not sure what a good search engine would be. They obviously put those things out on LinkedIn, but I don't know if it's the fastest. When there's money, which is not now, most definitely not now, they all have internships to which hundreds and hundreds of people apply. So you really have to be on top of things and be one of the first applicants, because just out of basic capacity that they have, they will just cut off the applications regardless of qualifications when they get the first 100 or so. So apply quickly and charm them, and you'll get in. And if you've been an intern, of course, the possibility of getting a job after graduation is quite high. And the big companies are even worse. I know that Roche, I don't know if Genentech is on the same schedule. All the internships decisions are made in November for the next summer. So if anybody knows a better way of searching for them when they open up, the network might help. If you have somebody in your network who works at those companies, internships are announced on a company-wide email, so everybody knows when those open up.
I think, you know, for internships, I don't quite know because I do think each company is going to have their own little thing. All the timelines are different. But independently, if you're looking for something within small or biotech or big pharma, it's all about networking. I mean, there is no other way. It's all about getting yourself out there, meeting people. And I'm not saying networking in the sense that someone is just going to go, you're just going to meet someone that's going to give you a job. It's not that, but they will know about someone that is hiring. They will know about this other thing that is starting next week. People just know, and you just know if you talk to them. Especially for small biotechs, if you're looking for something in LA, right? Going to local events, you know, incubators, you have lab launch, you have, you know, LA Bioscience. If you go to all these events by campus, by BCLA, obviously, by a lot of other organizations, that's how you kind of get to know. And local organizations like, you know, BCLA and others, they also have postings for local jobs. So that's another way to kind of subscribe to the newsletter and kind of, you know, get, you know about that. But just get out there, just talk to people. Just, it's exhausting. Listen, it's exhausting. I always had the change of clothes in my lab, right? Because you run experience until like 6 p.m. and then you go to a happy hour at 7, and then, you know, you don't even own a car and you have to like you know, take the bus to somewhere. It's a lot. And Olga, Cantor saved me so many times because I was living in WeHo and going to USC, and I was coming home exhausted after all these events, and I always stop, you know, by Cantor. So it's hard, but it's worth it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing that. Picking up some questions in the chat. We have a student who is curious about your guys' day-to-day schedule. So if any panelists would like to jump in and talk about what their day is sort of like.
I can jump in quickly for this one. So as I mentioned, I work in global regulatory strategy. So AbbVie is actually a top 4 biopharma company. And so we work really worldwide. And so my mornings start really early. So we'll have calls with Europe, Asia, really the global world. And so those calls are cross-functional and also within just regulatory. And so we'll have cross-functional teams. And so we'll either discuss, you know, if we have a meeting we're trying to prepare for, you know, what topics that the agency asks, how do we put together a briefing package? So that's just regulatory. Or we could have just regulatory meetings. So what's going on in Asia and how is that a marketing application? Are we trying to withdraw? What some kind of issues going on with that? So we'll work through those issues, or just updates as well. And then my afternoons, I'll get some free time as the rest of the world signs off or go to sleep. I'll have time to review the documents. And so either submissions I have to do, review some artwork, labeling, things like that.
Sounds good. Thank you for sharing, Linda. And Amanda, do you want to jump in on this question?
Yeah, something I forgot I mentioned earlier is that a lot of these roles, your job, everyone is basically solving problems, and your title is basically just which problems you get to solve. So you know, a lot of my day-to-day are cross-functional meetings. So there'll be one representative from 7 different functions, and we're all sitting in on the meeting, and a problem pops up, and we'll divide and conquer which one of the 7 of us is now going to handle this. You know, it might be we're meeting to go over questions that a health authority brought through. So regulatory is running the meeting, and they're saying, hey, Germany has questions about how many patients we're enrolling and about the diagnostic that we're using. So now we're going to divide and conquer. So, you know, ClinOps will figure out patients enrollment, and I'm going to figure out the answer for the diagnostic. And, you know, just really trying to, something that is surprising is you think that these big companies have everything figured out and they know how to do everything, and it's just a well-oiled machine, and nothing is a well-oiled machine. Everyone is doing everything from scratch every time. It's like we've never done anything before. And so every single time there's a new problem comes up, it's actually not a new problem. We've probably done it before, but you know, those people moved on. They decided to be patent attorneys now, and now we don't have them anymore. So we've got to figure out how to do this again. So it's really just like a constant churn of a problem pops up. We now got to go figure out how to answer it, and then we sit for a day or so, and then the next problem pops up, or they're all overlapping between different things. So For me personally, I sit on 9 different studies. So that means I'm on 9 different clinical trials at one time. So, you know, there's enough time in between that there's an ebb and flow. Sometimes I'll get 7 questions from, you know, one program, or I'll get no questions and I'll have a day to myself where I just sit around and wait for something to happen. So it's very fluid every day.
Well, I'm the opposite. My day is an introvert's paradise. I hardly have any meetings, maybe 2 a day is at the most, usually 1 or none. I just show up or I work from home. There's things for me to read, there's things for me to write, there's some questions I need answered. So I maybe write to scientists, maybe use a chat. Yeah, it's just finding things out and writing out solutions. It is, I'm not one of those people whose outlook is completely covered with meetings, because a lot of the time I just spend thinking.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, guys. I know that Sean has their hand raised, so would you like to jump in with your question?
Hi there. I'm a public policy major, and I'm interested in going to law school. I think my question, I think pertains more towards Mrs. Zimmerman. So my question was like, what role do you see like lawyers playing in shaping healthcare policy? Because I'm interested in going to law school and maybe emphasizing in healthcare law slash policy. So I was just interested in your answer because I know you said you were patent attorney.
Yeah, I'm a
I was
patent
just
attorney.
interested. Yeah.
Um, so big companies like Genentech have all kinds of lawyers, and lawyers play a huge role in anything that involves policy, because you know a lawyer is not only like a car crash, who pays how much and who is at fault. There's a lot of developing new policies or lobbying efforts or whatnot. But law school is like anything else. You go in there thinking you want to do one thing, and then something else interests you. There's, I don't know if you want to stay in Los Angeles for law school. There's obviously USC and that other school, but there's also Loyola Law School where I went, and Southwestern, and there's Chapman University Law School, which is kind of so-so. There's a lot of smaller law schools that may have better focus on what you want. So when you do that research, find again, all the faculty are listed on the school website. If you find an interesting professor involved in this subject, just write to them. They would love to hear from you, because like everybody else, nobody wakes up and wants to be a healthcare lawyer. There won't be any shows, TV shows about those either. So those professors would very much like some attention.
Okay.
If you have a good one, even if you wouldn't get into that school, that professor is not going to move your application along, but you'll learn more about the field and maybe go to a different law school with your knowledge.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Olga. And actually, I know we're kind of getting close to time, so I just wanted to share actually that today is actually Linda's birthday. I know she mentioned to me personally about needing to hop off early in case. So just wanted to let you know, feel free to leave if you need to. And happy birthday. Yeah, thank you so much for being here as well and sharing everything on your birthday. I always found that just so generous of you. And yeah, thank you. So okay. I'm picking up another question on in the chat. So what kind of changes are you observing in terms of the way things are being done in the biotech industry? And how could students prepare for those changes, maybe in terms of skills or experience? So if any panelists would like to share.
Well, everything is on computers now. Even a lab notebook is now the electronic lab notebook. There's Excel everywhere. So make sure you're used to those things, because they're definitely not going away. There's endless apps, and each company likes their own apps, and you have to learn them, and it's quite painful. But just the main thing is be prepared for change, because change is constant. Whatever technology is the hottest today will be outdated tomorrow. So just be prepared to learn new things. If you're an expert on one thing, of course, it looks great, but don't stop learning there.
I have to go back. I know I have said this twice already, but I feel this is the crowd that needs to listen to this. generative AI is not only changing how the processes of doing business, right? Because I feel the low-hanging fruits is like, help me create a list, summarize my email, summarize this. So that's kind of what everyone is doing, give me a recipe for like a vegan meal. So that's kind of what everyone is doing. But generative AI is completely changing the way we are going to do science. And the sooner we accept and learn and get on this ride, the better for any of us. I've told you, I've taken this job 5 months ago. I had no idea I was gonna be working with so much AI. And I remember, Amanda, you talked about Google, and I'm like, that's me every day. I just not Google, is ChatGPT. I have so many questions. I asked ChatGPT, how do I work with AI and how do I work with, custom GPTs? And I'm creating these things that I've never imagined that this was going to be part of my job in R&D. But AI is here to change science, and it is here to change how we're going to make our medicines. And the end goal, though, if you think about it, is that we're going to reach a lot more patients faster, right? There's a lot of bad stuff that will happen in the meantime, but that is the goal. So whatever certifications, whatever courses, anything you can do to learn about AI in business and in science, this is the time to do it. And I'll just tell you that my boss, so the head of R&D at Amgen, says that a chemist, that AI is not going to replace chemists or biologists, but a chemist with AI will replace a chemist without AI. So just I'll leave you with that.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, I know that it's really a capricious kind of place we're in right now. We're trying to figure out how to navigate with AI and all that. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. See if I believe that might be all the questions we have in the chat. So maybe a last call if anyone has questions for our panelists. I know they have just given such amazing resources and advice for us today. So
It's a little doom and gloomy with AI, but I don't think it's really that bad because fortunately for us, human bodies and living things are too complex for AI to really crack. It all ends up in vitro experiments and then some animal experiments and then human clinical trials. Fortunately, AI still cannot predict. Can design all those molecules and all those not even antibodies yet, but no one knows how the body will react to those, if they'll be safe, if they'll be effective. So there's still a lot of wet lab work to be done, and traditional science is not going away.
thank you for sharing that. All right, any last minute questions for our students? If not, I think we'll. Oh, I actually just got a direct message from Steven, who is asking if nutrition is a field worth looking at. I wonder if any panelists have a take on this.
Nutrition as applied to what? As healthcare or lifestyle, or there are all these companies that deliver balanced meals to the workplace. That's also a fun job. I think as background, it's definitely very important. But I just personally, I don't know the exact career path that can come out of it. But as knowledge base, I think it is quite important.
I think it's a different sector. Per my Instagram algorithm, apparently nutrition is the whole thing right now. And I don't know if it's any of our backgrounds. I do know a few people that I went and did my PhD with who are in that space, and they seem like they're really happy with it. I will also say that My background is oncology, but where a lot of pharma is focusing their efforts on right now is in the obesity space. So what you can never really tell is where pharma is going to go next. And it almost goes back to the question of like, how do we prepare? You almost can't because you don't know what the next big thing is going to be. When I got into the industry, I think Roche had an obesity drug and they sold it like, this is ridiculous. And they sold it and whoever else bought it, it's like, it's amazing now. And so now we're having to buy another one from somewhere else. And it's like, no, we already had one. And so, you know, you never can, even pharma doesn't know where they're going to be next. So, it's hot right now. It's big with everybody. Everyone wants the next new obesity. I think Amgen has one. I think everybody has one right now. So, yeah, not necessarily nutrition, but definitely obesity. I've seen a lot in the pharma space.
Well, if you're a nutritionist and you get a job at one of those fun supplement companies that are all over Southern California, that could be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Let me know if they need a patent attorney. I'll quit this depressing oncology field and work for a nutrition bar company.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I know, Craig, is there anything you would like to share on the topic?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think like all the other panelists, I mean, it just really depends how this nutrition background is going to be applied. I mean, if you're working for like a nutraceutical company or a company that specializes in like vitamins and supplements, you know, almost like the biopharmaceutical industry, it just depends, you know, where do you see yourself in that field? Do you see yourself in the manufacturing or creation of these like vitamins and supplements, for example? Is it more of like public outreach where you're sponsoring or advocating for the use of these types of nutritional agents, for example? So, you know, really, if, you know, figuring out your why of like where you want to be in that type of field, you know, I think it really applies depending on where you go. I mean, I guess, you know, my background, it's not in that type of industry. I mean, between healthcare versus nutrition, but I mean, I see no wrong way, at least if you want to go down that path, you know, by all means, you know, understand what do you want to do in that field.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, thank you for all the questions. I know we're getting really close to end time, and I want to make sure to respect everyone's time here, as well as especially our panelists who spending this like 90 minutes with us and sharing all these amazing ideas. So I think I'll move to closing out on this panel. Thank you so much again for everyone for being here, especially thank you so much to our panelists for just sharing all these amazing advice, insights into the industry, all these little nuances. I feel like I will have to rewatch this recording a couple of times because I feel like there's so many amazing things that I do need to pick up. But just a little bit to wrap up industry insights. We have more panels incoming. Upcoming panels include for international students, graduate school, entertainment, nonprofits, and more. So keep an eye out for that. We also have our internship SC resources, as well as in general, just events that the Career Center hosts. So please utilize these resources. I think as well as our panelists have mentioned, utilize our network, find people, talk to them, learn about their experience and all that. And I think it'll be amazing. So